Welcome to the Leader More podcast. Our motive is to pass on what we've found helpful over the years through leading teams, running operations, and dealing with life's challenges. We hope you enjoy. Pleasure to have you here. First guest. We've done 8 or so episodes with Scott Clark, and it's great to have you. And when I was sort of setting this up, you were always on my mind to be the first one, just with everything that we've gone through over the last sort of 12 months, but also too just getting to know the Bustle story. So 10 years, 2015, Bustle started, yeah?
Yep.
Gone from, what, 1 or 2? There was 2 of yous?
Oh, it was. I suppose it's not documented. You don't really take note of like who was there and when.
And you can't remember that long ago?
No, I can't. But yeah, there was like a couple of us, and you know, obviously when you start a business off, a few people sort of sift in and sift out. But yeah, there was about 3 of us that sort of got together, and then yeah, we just had more so say myself like in the idea and starting it, and then a development workshop. So it was like me and that person, which has come to be a part of the business. But
Yeah.
there was a few people involved, but in terms of sort of full-time staff, it was just 2 of us. Yeah.
Just on the side.
Yeah.
And fast forward 10 years, 30 odd plus in your team at Bustle?
Yeah, I think we're just about knocking on 30,
Yeah.
you know, like between FTEs and then full-time contractors. Yeah, just knocking on 30.
And something like 37 clients that you have that run the transport management system, that the platform that Bustle has.
Yep.
All within 10 years. And then on top of that, more impressively, 4 kids in 10 years as well.
Yeah.
How did that go? I imagine pretty stressful starting a business, having your first kid. You were saying that building a website, and you had little Louie in the crib beside as you were plugging away.
Yeah, well, I wasn't building the website. Gemma was.
You were giving orders.
Yeah, I was pointing out what I wanted, and but yeah, I suppose you just started somewhere where you didn't know what exactly you were doing. But yeah, like Louie was sitting there next to us, and everything was all exciting. Newish house that we just built, a new business, and then obviously a first child.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just sort of think, oh, well, I'm gonna start something, and she's all going to be, you know, beer and Skittles from here on in. But yeah, so
Little did you know,
yeah, lots has happened in 10 years.
Yeah. Why did you start it?
To be honest, like I'd left transport. I'd started moved away from it. I'd been there in the industry for a while, and I was beginning to think, oh, this is all getting too hard. You know, like there's just rules that are coming in to do with sort of compliance, which you get why they're there, but they'd create 2 more problems. And so I'd actually just decided that I was going to try my hand at something else where I could work for myself. So I moved into doing some finance with Crown Money Management, which is Scott, who's one of the directors of Bustle.
Yeah.
And, you know, like it was something different, helping people with debt reduction strategies. And that was really exciting to me because Scott had helped us sort of like focus our financial plan. And then, yeah, like it was hard because I kept contact with all the people that I'd worked with in transport, and this was when Uber was sort of starting to hit its strides. And you're like, well, there's definitely a gap here in terms of how people engage contractors and subcontractors. And our initial piece there was, well, there's an opportunity to do what Uber's doing, but more in supply chain. It's more about trusted relationships. So when your volumes go up, how can I sort of flex my network? But it's not just some Joe Blow off the street. You know, there's a lot more compliance, especially in the heavy vehicle space. So that was where the idea came from. And, you know, I would say we had an idea of the problem we wanted to solve, but, you know, I suppose how you end up getting there takes a few pivots and zigzags and what have you. So that's how it started anyway.
Yeah.
And when I started the finance thing, there was a big commission into the finance brokers, and sort of lending tightened up. Banks weren't approving loans that they historically had, and I'd started that off well, and it was starting to track in the right direction. But then if I don't get a loan, I don't get paid. And then, yeah, just obviously pitched this idea to a couple of mates, and they said, yeah, I think it's got legs. And so we just sort of went at it.
And so doing the 2 at the same, just sort of working through it, yeah?
Had to at the start, because obviously there's no money in a business that's not generating money. So I was still doing the home loans or the debt reduction strategies with Paz. And then, yeah, like we obviously got sort of a proof of concept off the ground, and made plenty of mistakes and things weren't going. You'd kind of get a glimmer of hope and an opportunity. And because I had a strong network of people I could go and pitch to from my years in the industry, that made it easier to get in the door. But, when they weren't really taking it up, you got to ask yourself why the business wasn't really going in the direction that we thought it would. And that's kind of your first learning curve. Is you can have a good idea, but it can be just a good idea and go nowhere.
Yeah. No one else thinks that.
Yeah. I always think my ideas are the best.
Well, they are they? Yeah. No.
Potentially ask.
That's right. Looking transport-wise and logistics-wise, like operations manager, contracts manager, fleet management stuff that you've done like in the past, and then you go into all the different stuff from a finance point of view. Not a bad sort of little apprenticeship to get to a point where you're CEO of a transport management software company, right?
A tech company, I suppose, is, I don't know how to program, and I watch some of the stuff those guys do, but when I look at, some of the reasons why I potentially did want to start my own business, it was, I learned a lot in some of the companies and the places I'd worked, but I always kind of felt like they left a lot on the table when it come to like how you would want to manage a team or, get people working together. And look, that's probably some naivety as well now that I've been on the other side of the fence, where you can kind of see it is very hard to keep everyone happy. But as much as I probably left some of those places after some lengthy periods of time, definitely cut my teeth and started to understand, what's involved in being in a business that's got a lot of people or got high value customers. And we're not working in transport. You're not working in sort of like finance in terms of managing people's money, or healthcare, where if you don't get something right, someone's going to die. Although saying that, heavy vehicles, they're pretty, there's a lot of risk involved. So definitely help you kind of like cut your teeth and go, there's a lot of things that you can take from that and then apply to what you're going to do in the future.
10 years ago, chain of responsibility was really just starting to become a thing, right? And I imagine that's what you're alluding to before in regards to all that sort of stuff. So you started off with the Uber style and that sort of format, and then pivoted, I'd imagine, after that, to a SaaS platform, I think it is.
Yeah, definitely. So look, the Uber, Big Horse Brad Johnson, he always loves it when someone says Uber for freight, because he know how much it kills me, because there was a lot of people off the back of Uber that were saying their product was an Uber for something. And, in supply chain, that you're not just going to give your freight to someone that you don't know. And when it's your own personal decision to hop in a car with someone and drive you 10 minutes down the road, and to be fair, you're probably hopping in them when you've had 10 beers and you don't really care. But with transport, it was very different. Like, you want someone that you've got some form of a relationship or an ongoing relationship with as a subcontractor. Or if you were going to engage someone as a one-off, well, then what are the credentials that you could potentially demonstrate to someone that's about to give them some work to say, hey, like this is the company, this is their insurance, this is the drivers that they've got working for them. So it did kind of operate in an Uber sense, where you could literally float a job and someone say, yeah, I'll take it. And then it would expedite the payment in terms of you'd pay up front, they'd do it. And we were finding like 30-40% reduction for people that were putting it through the platform. And these contractors weren't dropping their rates to get the work. That was their cost. But in some of the bigger companies, there's a fair few layers to then get it to that contractor at that rate. So you're kind of paying for that as a person booking through a carrier. So we were really just doing that, and we were showing people, hey, you can save 30-40% on some of your like transport movements. But fundamentally, the pivot came off the back that people don't want to pay for something up front. Like they need to have their cash flow set up where they can accrue that as yes, we're going to get you to do it and we'll pay you at the end of a period. There was that. And then a lot of the value in terms of, the savings for a business is not necessarily in that transport cost. It's the administration and the back house component.
Yeah, so ease of use.
Yeah, or just a reduction in paperwork, reduction in time to process something, getting information to the right parts of the business faster. And that's where the pivot came from, which we cut a few periods there. Shan, obviously, good friend of ours, met him playing footy and, had an existing strong relationship with, where he had entered the business, and we kind of just 1 month we'd have a lot of revenue, which was then going out to some of the contractors anyway. And then another month, like, people's volumes go up and down. So you might have a really high couple of periods where people are engaging lots of third parties, overflows to do work, and then all of a sudden it dies off, and then your revenue's gone. And most of the commentary was from carriers going, hey, we really like how your tools work, and we can sort of use our subcontractors to track some of these events and get transparency in where they are, because historically, unless there's hardware involved, you don't know where your contractors are when they're working for you. So it was kind of that where we were like, let's pull the handbrake up. What is it that we really want to do? We had a workshop with someone that had been introduced to us from Steve, who's on our board, and he just like stripped it back for us, and we're like, right, let's stop the open market. Let's stop pushing that. Let's just basically white label our software and then let carriers manage it themselves. And that's sort of
where you've landed,
where we've landed.
Yeah. With your background too, like there's always this thing with operations, right? Where it's the operations team and the systems team or the tech team. There's a little bit of, it's like electricians and plumbers, right? Like they're at each other.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. But with your background, it's operations should dictate the technology, not the other way around. And the tech guys are very much of, the technology should dictate how operations function, right? And I imagine just your point of difference, something that I've picked up with just getting to know you guys and what you do, is very much about the relationships that you have with the teams, but then also too your operational background and understanding logistics and just how that works, and then fitting something that not only works best for logistics carriers and companies, but just that boutique style and the fact that you can customize exactly what each operation really needs, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people, especially people that haven't had experience in transport, they sort of go, well, how hard is the industry? You're just moving something from A to B, which you are realistically. But it's really when there's a lot of variables that start to enter the mix, like asset sizes, qualifications of drivers, access to locations. So yeah, touching on your point is, in all operations, whether it be a customer service or operations or accounts and compliance, a lot of them were basically dependent on some form of communication to understand what each person needed, and a lot of bouncing back and forward. And it might sound strange given the technology is not new to us as people. The customer service clerk having to walk or call operations to find out where a truck is to then go back and ring a customer back. Like really, it was all designed around how do we speed that up, or how do we self-service those silos, and then also allow them to, I suppose, help each department do their best, because they're taking out some of that, getting on the phone or trying to catch them and ask them a question, just speeding up that transfer of information. But, everyone's only as important as they feel right in their own area. So the customer service team dealing with a angry customer on the end of a phone call, that's their most important thing to them. But then you walk into operations and he's got 15 scenarios like that.
Yeah.
And so how does he manage and scale that? And fundamentally, that's what, and there's some good TMSs out there. That's who you're up against. But sort of going back to your point, was a lot of the solutions that, even I'd used or, had seen in other businesses, a lot of them started out as an accounting platform.
Yeah.
And retrofitted to do operational tasks, versus what we've looked at as it's the people on the floor fundamentally that do the work, and that's the data that should flow back up. So just trying to bridge those gaps between different business units or different departments inside of a transport company, but not only inside of their transport company, potentially across to their contractor networks as well, which is something that we've really honed in on in that general freight space, is that there's a lot of a mixture between your own company assets, subcontractors, or even a third party that's just used for ad hoc work. Transport is easy in terms of its concept, but there's just so many variables that really add in the complexities to it.
Going from you and one other to nearly 30 or on 30, what's changed from your point of view, right? Obviously the team's grown. Leadership wise, directional wise, back in the day, you could just roll up your sleeves and get into it, get some help and all that sort of stuff, right? Where you could. Now, a little bit different.
I suppose it's like everything, it's basically scale. Whenever you think about even your friendship group, right? You want to go have some beers with a few mates, right? And there's 2 of you, it's easy. When there's 5 of you, it's where are we going to go? Who's free? I've got kids this weekend. I think running a business with some staff is pretty much a lot the same of that, is everyone wants to go in the same direction, but again, it's just that sheer number of people and the conversations and how many meetings do you have to make sure everyone's on the same page versus having too many meetings. So in terms of what's changed, it's just you don't know what you don't know. You've been inside of some other businesses leading up to this now where you know what definitely doesn't work. But fundamentally, you're just always trying to tinker with what feels right and leaning into that. Payroll's changed, like it's higher than what it was with 2 people. Has
More
changed.
money going out, yeah.
But you know, like it's also bringing in fresh faces, new experiences. That's not easy.
Yeah.
And it's
So
like,
the actual process, Gilby, of
more so just that people that have helped you get to where you've got to, like their value is invaluable. Like I really value retention, and that's hard to, as you know, keep everyone happy. And then as people bring in new ideas or new information and new ways of doing things, like how do you sort of not disrupt well, that's kind of how we've always done it, and that they're not wrong, and that the new ideas that are coming in, well, hey, there might be a better way of doing it, but not all your ideas are right. Like what's that fine balance between the two? So that's probably one of the things that I've experienced, and I think everyone like looks to you for an answer, but I don't think when I was coming through, I always looked to someone that was above me. I was like, oh, he knows everything, or she knows everything. And then you kind of realize like no one's got all the answers. And you just
making it up as they go.
they're making it up as you go. Same as your parents, like they tell you all these rules, and I'm the same with my kids, but you get a bit older and you're like, well, they didn't know what they were doing. They're just making it up as they went.
Winging it,
but just trying to continually tinker with that and listen to all parties, and there's different personalities, and not everyone has to be best of friends, but fundamentally, and obviously with your help in the business, is like we're all just trying to focus on what's best for Bustle, I think. And as long as that remains the center of the conversation, well, then you just manage on some of the fallout that happens with it. But to answer the question, it's just an evolving thing that you just got to continually polish, and if things don't feel like they're going the right way, you just stop and just go, what was going well, let's go back to sort of that, or let's park the other stuff, or no, that is going well, let's lean into that a bit more.
And you enjoy that process?
At times. Nah. As you know, mate, like I'm always a bit like, I look at the lighter side of life. I'm pretty easygoing and
pretty optimistic, I would say.
I'd say optimistic, like glass is always just over half full, maybe 3/4.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do always sort of think everything's going good or things are okay. But I do try to sort of like roll in there a bit of humour. And as I mentioned, in transport, we're not sort of dealing with life and death in terms of some important stuff that's going to save the world. It's a flowing sort of thing that something happens one day, the next day it's yesterday. You're only as good as your last day. So trying to sort of roll in a little bit of like, there's worse things that we could be doing and that. But I think I handle it okay. I'm sure that, it depends what seat you're sitting in and where you sit in a business to sort of someone to truly comment on that. Fundamentally, you're just trying your best, and sometimes you're not going to keep everyone happy. And as you know, I am a bit of a character, or I like to have a laugh, and sometimes that impacts me where I'm trying to keep everyone happy and I can't, and so that will drag me down. But as you probably get a bit older and you realize that that's a pipe dream to try and keep everyone happy, you do sort of make peace with it a bit more. Yeah.
Well, humour-wise, right? What does that do? Like, as in, from a leadership point of view, you a bit of a character, like you're alluded to. Like, why humour?
Oh, because it makes me happy. So if everyone else is miserable and I'm happy, then I'm okay. I don't know. Like I think it's like team sports and school, and you think about all the best times in your life. It's when you're hanging around people and having a bit of a laugh and just really enjoying each other's company. And I think that humour is just one way to break through. I was also pretty fat at school, and I'd get chipped a lot. So I was like, well, I got to find a way to get out of this. And that was my humour, So just a big part of my life and who I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So from a sporting team point of view, right? We've got a group of people here. We're all trying to get along. What's a common language here that everyone, will get along with? And humour's one, right? You hear someone funny or doing something, and it's like, you automatically like them because they make you feel good and you smile, right?
Yeah.
So from a building relationship point of view, I imagine that helps you a lot.
Yeah, I always try to layer in there. Sometimes I'll probably get my timing wrong and maybe wasn't the time for a joke, but that then becomes a joke after the meeting, where like, don't think that joke went down too well.
Yeah.
But no, it's pretty much about that, mate. Like, lighten up. Let's look at the common ground here and how do we have a bit of a laugh
Well,
along the way.
I could imagine too, with like under a bit of pressure with what you're doing, a massive growth trajectory from the business. And if you're serious and stiff and always professional, like you're probably going to go a bit mad.
Yeah.
You need to be quite optimistic and have that humor, not only for your own sanity, but also too for your team and setting that environment. Because things are, it's not you guys are just not ticking along and business as usual. You guys have got some aspirations, right?
Yeah, and there's also like when things get hard is like if you had to come to work every day and it's just like, oh, like I got that and I got that. It's like, well, what can we do to break it up and try to have a bit of a laugh? And it does get tough at times. There's a lot of pressure that goes into, I suppose, running a business, from cash flow to, customers, sort of their needs, staff, their needs. So, what's an easier way out? And that's just to maybe make a bit of a laugh that just takes your mind off it periodically or temporarily, and then you just crack on with it later on. But
lightens the mood. So like, good point in regards to like cash flow and clients, right? There's one aspect, and then you've got your team is probably another aspect, and it's just getting shit done, right? It's probably the third one, and there's a million others, right? But like, what one's probably the struggle that you find? Is it just depends upon what day, or is it
as an out of those three?
Yeah,
well, I don't want to say cash flow just in case my customers are listening. Nah, look, I think regardless of how much money you got in the bank or whatever, like managing your actual operating revenue and costs and things like that. If you're not worried about it, you're probably being careless. It's like a household budget or whatever. I'm probably past the point where those worry me, like that they're there. So like, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit there and like stress over it, or,
put some plans in place
put
to
some
make
plans
it work,
in place and go, well, yeah, what can we do to change this, So
What was your first job?
first job was working in a hanging concert in Rotorua. Well, sorry, my first job was landscaping for the old boy.
Okay.
But I don't know if he classified me as a worker with some of the things I was throwing up. But like school holidays, 2 weeks. If you wanted to have some money, first week was working for Dad. Me and my best mate, and Greg Case, we'd go work for Dad and throw the shovel around pathetically for a week and get some cash, and then blow it all of the second week of the holidays. But I didn't really want to be a landscaper. That wasn't sort of where I thought I wanted to go.
That didn't appeal to you, mate?
Nah, it didn't appeal to me, mate.
On a shovel?
Yeah, digging trenches out the back of Lake Taupo at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Look, taught you some life skills for sure. And first proper job was working in the Novotel, which was a hotel in Rotorua, and I'd work in like out catering, where we would pack up a truck, and up in the woods we'd set up some tables and people would have weddings or staff things. And then hanging concerts, which was just all the tourists coming through town, and they'd pack into this room and they'd watch like the Māori like hanging concert, do the show, and that was good fun. But that was while I was studying, and then just by default, I think a lot of people don't know how they end up in supply chain, and it's only kind of become more of a like, hey, at uni you can do supply chain and stuff like that. But my mate's old man had a dispatch sort of in the timber game in New Zealand, like all the forestry, moving the logs from the crews out to the mills or to the ports. And, there was a dispatching role there where you literally just had all of these loads that had to come from the bush and go to certain places. And you're on the two-way, telling drivers to go to this one and pick up that. And I had no idea what I was doing. But, his old man was kind of like, look, mate, couple of months and, there's someone there that can kind of give you the education, but they literally just need to be able to talk to someone and know what their next one is. And so that's how I got into it. Probably segues into why I stayed in it, is just the type of people you meet, like the salt of the earth, like some real characters, as people just at the end of the day that, that's what they're doing as well, whether they're a truck driver or a forkie or, they're a contract manager, like you meet some real characters. But yeah, that's how I got into it. I was just working for a mate's dad, and Greg at the time was talking about maybe we'll go to Oz and we'll go work in the mines and then go travelling. And we moved to Perth, and we never worked in the mines, and we didn't do too much travelling. He's a builder, so he got into his thing, and I ended up at Centurion, which was a big private transport company. Yeah. And kind of just thought, actually, like there's a bit of a path that you can cut yourself here. Yeah. Plenty of opportunities. So yeah, just.
And so your progression though, you like the people, right? Like, and it's not an uncommon thing, right? And it's funny, you hear like, let's say people in corporate roles, talk about their authentic self and all this sort of stuff, right? It's just like, well, transport logistics, it's like, that's not a thing. You don't even have to explain it. It's just like, that's Barry, that's how he is.
If you went out and sort of like tried to roll something like that in transport, you get some real funny looks, but some absolute like legends, just people that,
down to earth people.
One day you're pulling your hair out because they're like, what are you doing? And the next day they got you in, stitches, like I couldn't even rattle off like the type of characters you've met, but such good people. But also you start to realize like, 10% of Australia's GDP is sort of includes or revolves around transport and supply chain. So it's a massive industry. And so from there, it's like, well, if you're good with people, like there's actually a path forward, and it is a demanding industry too. Like a lot of people don't realize some people do some ridiculous hours just to keep trucks on the road. So it is, pretty demanding. But then with that, as a young bloke coming from New Zealand as well, I was like, some decent money here to be made, which kind of, you get caught up in this bit of a storm where it's like, well, if I put one, the right foot forward and I've kicked some goals and I've succeeded, there's another opportunity, and you see what they're advertising. You're like, well, I'm only earning that now. If I go and do that job, I'll get that. And you kind of get sort of carried up, and well, this could actually take me to quite a decent sort of career, which, I never said, I want a career in supply chain or transport. Like, just ended up there. And
the environment fit with what you're about. But then also financially, it worked, right? Like it was a good setup.
Yeah, well, my mate,
you need to pay the bills,
need to pay the bills, but when you're, young 20s and you don't really have bills other than rent and a car or whatever, but the boys would be laughing. We'd been down the pub on a Friday and it's like 7:00 and you've had a skin full of beers and there's like truck drivers ringing you to ask where their third trailer is at hookup yards, and you're like, I'm pretty sure Robbo said he dropped it in behind taut line of 10 and I can't see it. I think the thing about it was kind of that mix of the old school, new school, is you knew you had to be on call because you're getting paid a lot of money to do it, but you weren't going, oh, that's too hard, I'll not answer the question. You'd take a call at all hours, all days of the nights, because in your head you're like, well, that's going to lead me to that person's reliable, that person makes sure that even on weekends or whatever they're taking a phone call. And I can see two sides to that, where it's like, that probably wouldn't fit a family man that's got a lot of kids, or as many as me, but they've got other responsibilities. But for me, when you're like mid-20s and you're
keen and you want to progress,
you're like, I'll take the phone call. Drivers ringing you at 2 a.m. telling you got a flat tire, and they're 1,000 kilometers away. You're like, well, I can't change your tire for you. And they're like, oh, I'm just letting you know. And you're sort of looking at the clock in bed and you're like, cheers, Cobber, so. But again, then it's like that guy would wheel into the office and you'd be like, hey, Nico, and he'd be like, hey, go on, mate. And you're like, that's that phone call at 2 a.m. about the flat tire. You're like, you reckon it could have waited till the morning? Sorry, Mick, and you're just like, you love the bloke and you're just like, but it's just that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So from progressing through and you move from, you move into leadership position, did you find that transition pretty easy?
It was quite hard because when I was at, say, Centurion, they had probably a few line haul managers turn over, and I'd only been doing line haul for sort of 12 months and I was still quite young. And they couldn't find someone. And so I just sort of said, look, can I be the caretaker line haul manager? And if you find someone, I'll step back. But if you don't and I'm going okay, like I can take it. I think I was only like 26 or something at the time. And you're dealing like with subcontractors that, on reflection, they had 20 or 30 trucks at Centurion with drivers that they're rolling through. And as the line haul manager, you're determining who gets what services and who's got the set runs and who doesn't. And these guys are like got their whole life and their families like, life tied up in a transport company that, if it doesn't go well, like it could lose them a lot of money. And I suppose just that, not that you wanted respect just because you had the role, but dealing with people that were probably more experienced than you, older than you, definitely looking in hindsight, few things that you'd definitely do over again, which I think that's just normal. But it was probably hard in the sense that you just wanted to feel like you should be in that position. And when you're dealing with sort of like 40, 50-year-old veterans that have potentially driven triple road trains or, been in a company or an industry for 20 odd years, like I know now, even with myself, when I'm at a customer site and there's someone that's young that's kind of telling you how you should have things done, like I would have been that guy. But so that's probably the challenge I found was like fine line between being keen and being a know-it-all person that actually doesn't know what these other people know. So that was probably like my biggest sort of challenges. But
so getting people to listen to you before like you've earned their respect type thing was up. Is like a bit of a transition type thing.
Or just I think it's quite common in anyone like that, imposter syndrome, like, should I actually be in this role?
Yeah.
You know, I'm making decisions. Are they the right decisions? And
then you overcompensate for that. And
I think, like I said too, as well, you'd look to people for the answers. Well, no one's going to give you the answers. Like you actually have to find the answers yourself. And then if you make a mistake, know that you made a mistake and fix that mistake. So that was probably the challenges that I faced.
Yeah. Was there any sort of leaders throughout that time that you looked at and go, he does good? Like,
I think again, like I'd always go, those people, they got all the answers, and had some really good bosses over time, like Matt Brown, John Sheehan, just guys that, had been in the industry for a long time. And then over time, I kind of realized that I liked a lot of what they did, but there was pieces that I was like, I don't know if I really like that. And it took me a bit of time to cotton on that. And because at times I think, even Paz with his Crown Money Management, like he sort of showed me how he would pitch his product or talk to customers, and I found like I kind of tried to do his pitch to my potential sort of leads. And it took me a bit of time to cotton on that it's actually the little pieces of what they do that I really like, that stitches together and makes like, how I want to operate.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure I do things that other people might not like, but they, hopefully they like some of the things that I do. So, a lot of people that would sort of shape and that good leaders, but I think I just took bits of the ones that I really respected, and I was like, that's my sort of brand as a manager.
Yeah. And what were those? What was anything sort of come to mind?
John Sheehan was like, a guy came over from Queensland. This was on that sort of doing the transport game. And I'd go into his office just like full of steam, blowing up deluxe about how fucked everything was. And I'd just give it to him for 10 minutes, and he'd just be sitting there and he'd be like listening. And at the end he'd be like, and what would you like me to do about it, mate? I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just something. And he goes, and he just like sort of just sit back and just like absorb all the punches, and then just be like,
gave you the time and just was
and
calm.
then at the end of it, you're kind of like, I think I'm all good, mate. I'll just carry on with my job, just little things like that. And then, guys like Brownie, he was always like working towards something. If something wasn't right, like what are we working towards to fix that? So things like that.
Constant improvement.
Yeah. But even like not so much bosses, but peers as well. Like you got guys like Shan and Brad, who now I've been working with for like 10 years, and like Shan being like that sounding board, but not being afraid to sort of tell me how it should be, or Brad, who's very sort of like calm under pressure, and like how over time I've had to understand that there's elements of what they do that I need to absorb into sort of what I do to be maybe better at what I do. Yeah. So it's not so much even just your leaders, it's also some of the people that are, peers with you, and even people in a team, there's attributes of people that you're like, I really like the way that they do that, and I should maybe adopt some of that.
When you're hiring, so you guys have grown your team pretty rapidly. That hiring process obviously has been a bit of a key for you, and hard thing, right? You're not always going to get it right, but like, what do you look for? What are the things?
Well, we've made a couple of hiring decisions while we've been at the pub, which probably didn't go as well as they should have. So don't do that. But
these were people you met at the pub, or
people that we knew, but we were at the pub together. But no, we haven't done too many of those. A couple. I think it's in the past where there's so many factors. Again, like what's the employment market like? Like is it on an up? Is it on a down? Are there lots of people looking? Are there not? What's our budget?
Because
can we afford that position?
That's a tough thing, right? Like perfect world, I want someone that's got this. Yeah, but like, I've got this budget. This is all the market has at this point in time. Like, we need someone now. Like, what are we going to do?
We've definitely kind of felt that we've just made the right decision at the time, and sometimes it wasn't the right decision, but it was kind of the only decision we could have made. I think if we were to say what do we look for when we're going through it now, it's like what's the person, like what's their core bones. Like if the skills are a bit lacking, well, you can teach them that if the attitude's really good. But there's been times in the past where we've had 2 people apply for this job and we need someone. this is the best out of the two that we could find. And, you know, as much as people go get a recruiter to find you, that's their job. It's like, well, we didn't have 30 or 20 grand to spend on a recruiter. And there were times when we didn't hire anyone at all because we're like, we don't think that even the 10 people we interviewed didn't quite seem right.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is a hard one these days too. Like, people can say one thing during an interview process and, you know, sometimes their personal situation changes after they've joined and it's nothing to do with you, which we've had a couple of those. And then others probably were good at the interview process, but then when push come to shove, like, you know, and sometimes like they might have come to our business and been like, you know what, this isn't the place for me.
Yeah,
so it's not a personal thing. It's just not what they wanted. And,
Yep.
you know, vice versa from us as well. This is what we're kind of wanting. But look, hiring is one of those dark arts. You know, I can see why there's HR departments in bigger businesses because it does take up a lot of time. But yeah, if you have no interest in it and give it to someone else, well, you know, then you don't really know who's stepping foot into your business. So trying to stay still close to that. Even, I mean, it's not like we've got hundreds of staff. So, but yeah, hiring wise, it's a real tricky one. I mean, if anyone's got the perfect recipe, I'd be shocked. But,
So quality of character though is the big one for you.
It's big.
Over skill, over technical ability,
Yeah, I mean, look, if they're depending on what role they're in, but obviously if you're programming, or technical ability is pretty important. But you know, that's where again you've got your staff like Brad who sit there and go, well, I can check the technical piece, and then you get some of the other guys around the business that can sit there and be like, well, yeah, I think from a character perspective, like, that's good. Yeah,
makes the right fit. From an environment point of view, picked up a few things you've sort of said, you know, just about relationships and about you care about people who have done a lot for you guys in the past, and maybe balancing that between, okay, well, this is what Bustle needed back in the day, but what we need now is something a little bit different, you know, in regards to how you do things.
We've definitely been through it in the last 18 months. You know, before that, we had everyone join and we're just like, you know, we're very close and a lot of conversations and a lot of trial and error. And I think what's hard you don't really realize it till you reflect back on it, but we probably had the customer base where it's like, if something didn't go that well and, you know, like we made a mistake, you could kind of go, oh, sorry about that, you know, like, and it would never be a huge one, but like just painful to those that were sort of trying to do something at that point in time. And you kind of go, well, that was okay. That's what we did back then. And then as you bring on more customers, more high profile customers, you know, like you start getting to that point where it's like, well, you know, that's probably not going to cut it anymore. And that you got to start thinking about, well, where do we go to from here? Even to the point where when you start moving up in the size of your team, well, you know, you might go on a tender when the tender with this customer says, you know, like, how do you keep your premise and your devices secure? And you're like, good question. Well, that was something that we didn't know until 2 years ago, because before that we didn't have the customer base to actually like even know that that's something that we've sort of been focusing on. So you start implementing all those controls. And then you look at some of your team and they're like, well, I don't like the computer that I'd have to move to because of the security component. Like, I prefer working on this. And it's not that you don't disagree with them, or you go, well, hey, I want you to sort of stay on what makes you happy. But from a business's perspective, that's what we kind of need to do now. And so navigating just little examples like that where you understand where they sit, and that, you know, same as like those departments, you only sort of care about your own little world sometimes, and that all you see is like you're being impacted by something, and tying that back into like, I'm someone that likes to keep people happy, and I never wanted to have a business that didn't treat people well. They can't see what you can see, and you're trying to keep everyone's interests in mind, and that can be a bit of a tiring exercise because there isn't actually a perfect answer, but so.
Yeah, and you're probably going to upset people, right? Like if, you know, like doing what's best for the team or business operation, right, compared to doing what's best for that individual, that doesn't necessarily align, right? And if you've got a point of view of, I really care about people and I want to make sure I look after them, you know, that can be tough, right?
Yeah, and you make mistakes, like not critical ones, but you make mistakes all the time, and, you know, you don't mean to, and you know, they're not huge ones, but they're just little things where it's like, I wish I'd done that better. But, you know, over time, especially with people that you've worked a long time with, you know, even that accessibility where, as you know, like with our growth, we've had to sort of move into a second office and there's like split rooms. It's like you go a period of time of not having a small touch point with someone because you're in one office, you've got You know, you get into the office, you got meetings all morning, then you've got phone calls to make, meetings in the afternoon, and then it's been like 2 days without some little touch points. And then you've also, in that time, they've heard or got wind of a decision that they don't quite like based on a change.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like the next time you talk to them, there's that sort of that gap, and then there's something else, and it's been another few days, and then all of a sudden you've had people that you've kind of sat very close to in the same office, you know, for quite a period of time, and then all of a sudden you're quite far apart. There's decisions being made that they're not privy to because, you know, it's hard to keep everyone across everything, and it's not everyone's business, some of the decisions that are being made. But, you know, those kinds of things are pretty challenging because, again, you're not going out. You're not turning up to it going, whose day can I ruin, you know, like, who can I piss off today? But there's things that need to keep moving. And do you sit back and wait 10 months to make a decision, or do you kind of lean into what feels right, go, yeah, let's do that, and then sort of tinker with it?
Yeah.
And there's a bit of fallout. So going back to the question of, like, you know, growing the team and the, I suppose the different people that sort of helped you get to where you are, like, they'll always have a place in our business and they can be a part of where we're going. What part of it that they want to take a piece in is kind of up to them. Like, with your help, we've obviously been working out, like, where do we want to kind of move our culture to, and not that it's a bad culture, but like, well, we're here, but how do we
it's
get
just
to
changing
there?
all the time, right? Like,
Even some of the, like, the new leaders, and we're pretty transparent and have a lot of chats, and you spend more time with your colleagues than you do at home sometimes. Even if someone's kind of like, well, I get where you're kind of like trying to take the business, but, like, you know, I've got my own things going on outside of work, and I do enjoy coming to work and doing what I do, but I also enjoy at the end of the day going that I'm clocked off and I'm going to go and do my other parts of my life. And that's fine. Like, the business is got to be about, well, everyone's going to, like a footy team. I know Brad Johnson, our CTO, he loves sport analogies, so I always use sport. Like, when you got a footy team, you know, like, you've got players and positions, and business is not really much different. Is like, people can play a role in winning, and their roles sometimes are specific to a certain sort of task. And I don't think business is any different. And not everyone agrees with that, but, you know, you can't have everyone as the same. Like, it just doesn't happen.
It just doesn't work. Yeah. Being like that optimistic character that you are, like, it'd be hard to stay upbeat with that sort of stuff. Like, what do you do to keep going?
I suppose being optimistic by default, you kind of don't go, oh, this is all pointless and what's the point? And, you know, you definitely have some flat patches. You might just be talking to your mate on the way to work. Like, got heaps of mates. It would be Shan, Greg, Lepo. Just get on the phone and you talk a bit of crap, talk about footy, and then you share some, and then you realise they'll be venting to you about something that's happening in their workplace and or their, you know, environment, and you're like, everyone's the same.
Yeah, you're not alone.
You're not alone. So, and then you kind of hit work and someone says something funny and you're like, yeah, it's not bad coming here every morning, you know, like, we're doing something we love. And for me, ultimately, is like, you hear about your mates who go through those challenges in workplaces, and, you know, like, it's not their company, but they got positions of responsibility or what have you. Yeah. Well, if I'm going to take on those headaches, why don't I take them on with my mates in our own company? Like, why do I want to do that for someone else? Which is a big driver, right? Like, get out of bed in the morning, it's like, well, it's our company, you know. Yeah. Take the headaches on for ourselves and make it better.
Yeah. It's funny, that dynamic though, hey? It's like, just because you find out someone else has gone through or is going through some similar stuff, I feel better now. It's just like, well, they're feeling the pain as well. Like,
but don't get me wrong, I do sometimes look at it over the years where you kind of like, would have been nice to, like, not have the financial headaches and get paid a decent packet to have those stresses, but it not be my company. Yeah. You know? But
I don't reckon, like, you know, getting to know you, I don't reckon you would enjoy the 9 to 5 of just, hey, turning up, Groundhog Day, 9 to 5, same old thing. You would probably go a bit crazy.
I would, and I think, like, there's definitely times, like, we haven't touched on it, but our business is where it's at because, like, you know, Gemma's been supportive about what we're trying to work towards. And, you know, probably some days she would wish that I did have that 9 to 5 where, you know, like, you turn up to work, you know, you do your piece and you park it in your home, and then you're really present. And that's a hard thing too, as running a business and a partner and a dad. Yes, it would bore the hell out of me, and it might be good, but if I went and took a role like that with her, like, I'd probably start going downhill in terms of just, like, not being happy and satisfied. So, you know, like, it's a massive juggling act, but it never really ticked my boxes. I'm like, just going there and being like, yeah, I'm done, I'm out. Yeah. But I do respect it as well. Like,
If that's what people want
if that's what people want. And again, you couldn't have a whole business full of everyone that wanted to be a boss or a manager or whatever that's all doing that. Like, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
You know, like, you kind of need to have people that make up the team, and then you just put those people in the positions where they want to be and where they give the business the most value and ultimately themselves the most value and satisfaction as well.
How do you go with that work-life balance? Like, is that a struggle?
You're asking the wrong person. I'll ring Gemma.
Yeah. When Gemma's listening to this, she's probably screaming.
I'd like to think I've gotten better, but, you know, it is pretty hard for me, what we're doing is kind of like a setup to enjoy the later parts of our life. So it's very hard, not because I find it's always stressful, but it's probably because I just actually genuinely love what I'm doing, and I love my family and I love my time with the kids. But, like, you know, doing what we're doing gives me a lot of personal satisfaction, and that's probably where it's hard to find that balance is, you know, some mornings I'll get up early and go to the office early because we've got a lot to do, but I wouldn't be there unless I really loved it, enjoyed solving those problems as well. So look, it's always a hard one, but when you kind of feel like you're always working in that, but when you look at it like, you know, I run my kids to school, you know, 50% of the time and pick them up 50% of the time. On the weekends, you got sport with your kids, taking one to basketball or another one to swimming, and you're coaching the kids in footy team on a Sunday. You know, you're home more often than not most nights, and then, you know, again, every now and then you need to blow off some steam and literally just switch off from everything, which for me is a few beers with my mates. And
that's your outlet,
and that's my outlet. But again, like, it's not always a good thing, but it's a bit of a reset. Like, I find like I'm happier in terms of I've had my blowout. I've stopped thinking about work for a while here, and now I can kind of get back to family and work. But it's always a hard one. There's lots of things I think you're lying if you say that you're doing it 100% right. You're just trying to do it the best you can. It can go too much the other way, where if I sort of go, all right, I'm going to lean into all my family stuff now, well, then the business will suffer. And if I do the same business, my family will suffer. So, you know, it's try to do little things along the way to keep it good. Yeah. And that's another privilege we've got. Like, Jem's got some work at the moment where some of her days, her normal days are kind of shifted around, and she's just like, I need to change days. And I'm like, yep. And we just put it in the calendar and I switch, and it's a small thing, but it's just the ability to go, well, yep, like school holidays. If we were both working jobs, like we'd all have to always be applying for leave, whereas like I'm in the luxury where I can apply for a little bit of leave or take a bit of leave, but also most of my day is talking to people, keeping things moving, being available to people. And we got lots of luxuries like that. So work-life balance is hard, but you just do it.
It's and probably just getting caught up in something that you're passionate about is just like that thing where you don't even realize sometimes. It's just like, oh, I'm all in, you know, and then you just, oh shit. Yeah. But it must be quite comforting to have your wife and Gemma,
they're the same person.
Wife
sorry.
In Gemma.
Sorry. Wife and Gemma.
Are you gonna? Don't. Are you letting something out of the bag here? Or? But it must be quite comforting though, from a point of view, is that you know that she knows that you wouldn't be able to cope with a 9 to 5. You'd go crazy.
Yeah, I think so.
She can actually be patient and tolerant of the fact of, you know, what you've got to do.
She's very patient. It's like anything, you sometimes you don't talk about it, and that's worse than probably like actually talking about it. Like, you kind of think, nothing's been said, so we'll just sort of leave it lay. But yeah, definitely patient. But we've got common goals in terms of where we want our family to be. So, you know, that probably allows her to be patient. And, you know, it's been like 10 years and it's flown by with the business. And so I think just having common goals allows that patience.
Yeah. What are your go-tos, your qualities that you rely on the most as a leader? Like, building relationships is probably a big one for you.
Well, definitely relationships. I think like if you're going to ask someone to do something, you probably need to have that good relationship to ask them in the first place. Or you need to know how they do what they do to ask it in the first place, which in what we're doing which is programming is our core product. Like, I can't program. I've learned some stuff over the years, but no, like what those guys do is, you know, amazing, and there's no real playbook to it. So in terms of leadership, I suppose it's just about, for me, it's finding that middle ground, because everything has a middle ground. You know, like it's like the yin and the yang. Like, you know, there's a good and bad, or pro and con. To me, like everything we do and what we do is, well, we could spend 6 months and plan it out, and it would probably take us 3 months to build it because it's planned out so well, and that the customer doesn't see something for 9 months or 10 months, or we can get something out in 2 months that kind of gets them something that keeps them interested, but has a few bugs, or, you know, has a few things that you need to kind of then fix on the fly, or move quick on because it gets taken up. What's better, you know, like, so
those competing priorities.
For me, it's always like, well, taking in like the team's consideration, the customer's the consideration, the financial consideration. As a management style, it's always trying to find like what can we do and how can we get there, and then just getting people around the table or talking to them, kind of navigating that space to get the outcome that, you know, you think the business needs.
Yeah.
And again, even you get that wrong sometimes as well, you know.
Well, it's sort of like we have this thing that there's always this perfect solution. It's like, but there's never really the perfect option. Like there's two options. Which one's better than the other? And none of them are perfect, but which one's better?
Sometimes I even find like my leadership style is like, what's going to give us the best bang for the least amount of pain, and you know, weighing up those types of things. But we've had scenarios where we've planned out something and we've thought we've planned it meticulously, you know, move it in development, develop it, hand it over, and then the customer uses it completely different to how we even agreed it was going to be built. Like they said, well, no, that's how we want it built, and you build it, and then they use it differently. Not because they're trying to give you the shit, it's just that's the people on the floor and how they're going to use it. So I kind of lean into that, well, close enough is good enough if it's fast enough sort of mentality, as long as it's an educated risk. And so my leadership style kind of like revolves around like, how do we get to where we want to go, or take lots of incremental steps as opposed waiting for everything to be perfect, because I don't think there's such a thing as perfection. But, you know, like there's a reality to what we do, and I don't want to turn around and tell people it's going to be 6 months when it could be 2 months, but it's 80% of what they need versus 6 months and 100%, because we've learned over the years that you give it to people and they won't use 100% of it anyway. So
taking you from landing your first, you remember the first client, Bustle?
Yeah, I remember the first client. Yeah, it was one of our biggest now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is like Maddock Transport, Matt Brown and Danny Maddock. Like they've grown that company amazingly. Like when I first was at Centurion, and Danny was a contractor there, and he came through with a couple of trucks, and I honestly, I don't looking around clients' accounts, but I'm sure they've got like over 700 pieces of equipment. It might be more, a lot more. It could be slightly less, but they're big. You know, that was our first client and our first real opportunity. And, you know, being on site there on those first sort of go live dates, working on their contracts with them was pretty cool.
Exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
What's the formula that you use? Like, you know, like get, you know, CEO is your title, right? But like when you're in a growing business, like a lot of it is find and work too, right? And getting to that point where you're building your client base, and you've been at the front of that. Obviously there's people within your team that do it as well, but what's your style with that? Like how do you go about that?
Magic formula?
Yeah.
Because a lot of our opportunities, or many of our first ones, came through people that I'd worked with and I knew, I kind of feel like they knew how I was and how I would probably attack work for them. So they kind of had that trust that I wouldn't have been there saying, yeah, we can do that, and not do it. And then there was also a part of me that was like, well, we just got to find a way to be able to do that, but also not do it in a way where we're going to sell something that we can't deliver. A lot of it was not luck, but, you know, I suppose it's luck, but we had to get ourselves into the position to be able to, you know, put our name forward as a potential solution for them. But I think I'm pretty outgoing, but I can get pretty like anxious if I feel like I'm going to let someone down or a customer down. And so from the moment we started, like I was real conscious and cautious not to say yes if I knew we weren't going to be able to do it. And so everything we've kind of done, like it's never been easy. Like people's priorities changed. I thought this was going to be like this. And you know, when we didn't have a team that designed anything, it was all conversation. So our understanding of what they said and their understanding of what they said, there's always those miscommunications, but fundamentally, like, we ended up delivering on what we said. And, that's always a hard thing. Like, I look at our product today and it can do so many things, and I still would love to change so much of it, but there's only so much you can do. But now in the early days, we kind of were like, look, this is where we are and this is where we want to get to. If that aligns with what you guys want, like, let's go there together.
Yeah.
And kind of going, well, building into the agreement, well, if you need these 6 things done, we'll make sure we do those 6 things within this time period. And as we've gotten a bit bigger, if you can't see enough value in what the software does now, like, here's where we're going, but here's what it does today. We'd love to work with you. If we can't solve your problems, or you can't see a way that our software solves your problems, like, let's not listen to my promises. Like, let's maybe just, you continue your search for another solution, and I'll give you a call or I'll email you back when we've done what we said we'd do. And then there's a lot of people that go, no, you know what, like, it's going to take time for our business to get this and use it properly, because they all know that people use software not to its, I mean, we'd all be guilty of that. Like, your phones do so much more than what you can use them for. So just taking that kind of mentality into it, where it's like, well, here's where we're trying to get to, and here's where it is today. If that's enough for you, great, let's work together. Some sort of like variation to that in any client. The bigger guys that go, well, no, like, this is what we want and we're happy to pay for a committed deadline, then that's cool, because, it pays for the headaches that you take on, versus some smaller companies that don't quite have those budgets, but say, well, like, it's going to take time for us to take this up. So yeah, looks like it can solve more than our problem.
So a lot of honesty, a lot of transparency, and building that trust just through your actions, right?
Yeah, you try to be, like, whether people think that's genuine or not, but like, I think one of our largest sort of customers that we're working with of late, one of the things that sticks in my ears about when things started progressing forward is they invited us over to Queensland to do a demonstration of the software, and they had some of their key people around. We went through the system, and sort of after the 2-day workshop, like, the parting comment was like, you're the first person that hasn't tried to sell us the software. Like, you've literally just answered questions and explained how you would solve our current problems. And yeah, there's some gaps. But to me, I took a lot out of that. Was like, I don't need to sell our software. I need to show what it can do. And, if that's not enough, we'll then get the feedback to take that back. And we've got our vision and our roadmap, but again, going back to competing priorities, what do you work on and when? But yeah, that sort of stuck with me as like, we'll just show them the platform. And if that's not enough, it's like, okay, well, they'll give you feedback. And mate, like, we had a meeting this morning. We met this person 5 years ago, and they haven't done anything to do with sign-on glass since we first met. And maybe their business didn't quite have the need for it.
Yeah.
But we're the first person, and we'd done some other things with some supporting businesses that maybe makes that decision easier to go with us. But if you're not in for a quick win, like, it'll come back around. Like, we've had people say, oh no, your software's no good, and they've been away and come back 3 times. Yeah. So what was the solution? Alternatives, were they not better, or were they actually, it was good? But like, I'm not on the other side using it either. I know where we're trying to take it.
Yeah. You mentioned about junior coaching. So you coach a footy side, like, with a young fella?
Yeah, the win-loss record ain't going so well as a coach, but...
Is it about that at that age?
Nah, well, that's what it should be, mate. I remember when we were kids, they're like, oh, as long as everyone has fun. Yeah. So I've told my team this year, is like, what are we here for? And they're like, oh, to have fun. I'm like, yeah. And do you know how you have fun? They're like, how? And you're like, by winning. Like, let's win. But
so 10-year-olds?
Under 10. So my boy Louis, following in my premiership footsteps at the South Perth Lions. But little fella wanted to, well, I obviously sort of was like, hey, let's go have a game in the league, son. But, he went down there for since he was 5. And, obviously that's where I met you and met, when I first moved to WA, didn't really know too many people. And, me and my mates found it sort of quite hard to settle in here because we didn't have sort of a group like we did back home. Yeah. And joining the Lions in South Perth and just the friendships I made there, and just now seeing my boy go back down there, and it was good. I could stand on the sidelines, watch him play, give him a bit of advice, take some videos, and then, as you do, you kind of, what's the coach doing that for? Like, so. But then a few parents are like, oh, you'd be a good coach.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's what my old man did too. He coached the team for a few years because he wanted to see you play footy. And then, so yeah, I've sort of ended up coaching last season and this season with my oldest boy. And yeah, even got my daughter down there. She's playing now. And then my other son, he's down there now. So Harriet's got a few more years to go and we'll get the boots on her as well. But
I think she's 2, is she? Yeah, so
she's nearly 3.
Nearly
but,
3,
But yeah, no, just coaching Louis and a bunch of, I suppose, young men and women.
How do you find that process? Pretty challenging.
It's like herding cats, mate. They don't, they get there after school and they're all hyped up to see each other. And no, it's cool. It's hard because when they're so little, like you're not teaching them too much about structures and things like that of moves, but you kind of just trying to get them to understand like why they're there and try to remember that they are kids. But yeah, just little things like we had a guy, he wasn't getting much ball, and when he did get the ball, it's that even though they're kids, it was like, like kids dropped it again, but just teaching them enough to say, right, in the first 3 tackles, give it to Billy, and Billy, when you get that ball, just hold it and just run straight. They won't want to tackle you, you're a big unit. To see him not get a run one season and then come back and play, and like, one game we're up at Alkimos and he's literally just like run 3/4 of the field, like barreled 15 kids and scored a try. It's just awesome, and then to see him go to another level because he's like, oh, that was actually pretty easy. Just little things like that with kids, and having your boy in the team obviously makes it a lot easier or more enjoyable too. But I think it is just a part of a few different selfish things. Like the club gave me a lot when I first moved to WA of like friends that are still friends to this day, some that are business partners. Through to not only coaching, but you end up on the committee and then the treasurer of the committee, and not something that you kind of put your hand up for because I've got a bit on my plate, but you talked about a business and a family, and then all of a sudden
you're coaching a sporting team, you're on a committee of that team,
and then you're helping make sure the bills are paid for the canteen and stuff like that. And it is a lot, but definitely it's like something that you can do to give back, and then everything loops back around. Like some of the people that Shannon's really good at this is like you end up working with people, like you're down the club and like you need something, you need a sparky or a plumber, we'll talk to such and such from down the club. Coaching or being a part of a committee, you're dealing with people, which is again another opportunity where I can have a few jokes. Like some of the kids, they're just like rolling on the floor laughing, and I think I'm Dave Chappelle or someone like super comedian. Louis rolling his eyes, but it's just another way.
He's heard that one 10 times.
He's heard it 100 times, but it's just another way to blow off some steam, and just have a laugh and enjoy. And rugby league, how good's rugby league, mate?
And you said about giving back, right? And I reckon community sporting clubs, no matter the sport, don't get the accolades they deserve, right? What did they give you? Like, what are you giving back for?
Well, I suppose, it's like everything, you don't know. When I was down at the club and I was just a player down there, you go to the canteen and you get yourself, a Powerade and a hot chips while you watch the game, or you go to the bar and get a beer. Those are all people that are giving up their time. And once you're down there with your kid, and then you sort of, you go to a few meetings, you're like, shit, this whole place is just run off people that are just giving up some time and they're getting nothing for it. It's like, why would you do it? And it's just like, well, do you not want your kid to have one of those areas to go to meet friends, to play sport, to learn life skills? Like, how do you make sure that continues? And so you go and do your part, and all it takes is a few people with that same mindset, and you don't want to see them struggling. Like, look, like honestly, even in my role, like I wouldn't say I do anywhere near the most down in that junior committee, from Ben through to Megan and Joe, who are doing registrations and the uniforms, to Dicko that's doing the canteen. Like, man, people put some hours in for nothing. But yeah, I guess, why do we all do it? People, families, friendships that last a long time, finding that common ground, which ultimately down there is rugby league, but could go for any sport. And people have their own sports, but I suppose I didn't step into it wanting anything, but I kind of felt like the Lions gave me a massive foot up when I first got to West Australia. So what can I do to give back to the club, and then also set it up for whoever comes afterwards?
And continue the legacy, so to speak. When you got here, like, not knowing anyone, and then having this little community where you obviously played a bit of rugby league or rugby over in New Zealand, and then you come over here and get involved in that, and you got a ready-made family, essentially.
Pretty much. Yeah. We were, I mean, like, what it was like probably in like 09, 10, you'd do your training on a Thursday or Thursday, you'd sort of stay at the bar, and then they'd be kicking you out at 10 o'clock because you'd had a skinful, and then you'd go somewhere for a few more beers. You go to work.
I was never doing that, mate.
Yeah, I wasn't so smart, but you probably had more responsibilities than me at that stage. But then you go to work Friday and push through Friday. And, you play league on a Saturday, and then you're with the boys again on Saturday night, and then Sunday, and it was just very much a family away from. Especially I was from New Zealand, and a lot of the guys were from over east too. Where our thing in common was that we didn't have anyone there like some of the people that were from the club.
Yeah.
So, for me, and seeing even down the junior club, like a couple of people that have come through into the club who have just moved from over east, and they've got jobs and families here, and they've come to a footy club like ours, just to have them come in and try go, well, hey, like that's introduce them to people like you did to me when I first got down there, like, hey, yeah, you're down the club, like this is who that is, and introduce them and give them like a home away from home because all their family's probably back east. So, and there's lots of little things like that down a footy club.
Yeah. Was there anything that you picked up from your childhood or parents and that you live by now?
Yeah, probably a couple of things. Like, mum was a school teacher, then later on a principal.
Okay.
Like just super hard worker, like did a master's degree while she was teaching, and that's also raising like me and my brother. My old man was a landscape architect, like really talented, and a couple of things he always said, if you work hard, you'll be okay, and if you like work smart, you'll be okay, but if you do both, you'll be rich.
Yeah.
Little things like that, but also just like the meaning of a dollar that, like I couldn't go and play that second week of school holidays, and I say play, or on a Saturday when I was like 13, 14, 15, I couldn't go out until the cars were washed and the lawns were done. And it might sound trivial, but like you had to get up and do your responsibilities, and then you could go and enjoy yourself. And you, at the time, you're just like, blowing up at the old man because it's like the car doesn't need to be washed every week, mate, like it's fine. The old Calais, Holden Calais in the driveway, she'll be right. Even just getting on the end of a shovel when you're 15 with your mate and like digging a trench and pumice, and your hands are like, custard when you're a kid, and you think everything's super hard, but just those little things where mum, even though she was a school teacher, you'd see her working on the school holidays, and not to our detriment, like we still had our family holidays, and mum wouldn't be like, oh, I can't do anything, I'm working. Just that
there was that work ethic. It was on display all the time from both. Yeah.
And being a principal, like mum she's effectively running a business once you're a principal. Like who's paying who's the caretaker, or this building needs to be replaced. Less time teaching, you got to work out the curriculum, but then you got to work out all the buildings, the maintenance, and all that stuff. So just some work ethic, and I suppose finding something that you're passionate about from the old man's perspective, like, being a landscape architect, you're not going to scale your business. You can't, it's hard to scale. It's something that you do, and then that's kind of like, if you stop doing it, you don't get paid. And, same with mum, if she stops teaching, she doesn't get paid. And for me, I was always like, well, I kind of want to find something where at the end of it, I have something that, will pay for not having to work again if I don't want to, or if I don't want to go to work on a Monday, that the money is still coming into the business for us to have a living. So those was just some things that I was like, well, if I'm going to work hard, like how do I get myself into it? Doing something like that can then sort of, continue to feed the family. Yeah.
So 10 years in, mate, like what's the plan for Bustle moving forward? Like from a strategic point of view, as the leader of the place, what are your thoughts? Where are you off to?
I've got no idea, Daniel. Thanks for the question. It is like we've had a few sessions with like the team to say we've got some short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. And some of the team, as I said, like I'd look to other people for answers. Sometimes the team are like, like what's your vision and things like that. But I always just strip it back to basics. Is like, yes, we're trying to build a product that's of value that, people can, or ultimately if someone was to invest in the business or want to buy the business, like, people are happy because they've had a return on their time and hard-earned effort and dollars. But the way I look at it is, if you just continue to deliver value and, you know, make small steps towards like giving more value, then all of those things kind of like work them out for themselves. And, you know, like fundamentally, we've got guys like Shannon, Brad, and all of our investors that have been really patient, and we've really focused on like that sustainable and organic growth. Like, you know, the amount of times I've walked into Shannon's office and be like, I need to hire like 2 people, and he's like, no. You know, like, and then if I go away and I bring something back and I say like, this is what I want to do and I need someone for this, and then he might say yes, he might still say no, but he's made me think about it. But fundamentally, like, where to next is we have a really strong customer base. We've got some really awesome relationships, and this is from like ASX listed companies, privately owned companies, like some of the largest carriers, down to someone that's just got 5 trucks. To me, it just shows the versatility of our software, and we've spent a lot of time trying to get the back of house processes right. So where to next for us is just really about more of the same. You know, continue to deliver that value to the industry. Like, we do really want to be like that gold standard for transport management systems. We want to connect to as many complementary softwares as possible. So a real strong investment in connecting and data transfer to even could be a competitor of ours that solves another problem for our customer. Like, it's not our business, it's our customers that matter the most. So yeah, realistically, it's just to continue to like deliver value to some of our existing customers, all of our existing customers, but some of them have a very clear plan as to their, you know, their organic growth and their business units that they would like to use it. So carry on with that, you know, find any other customers out there that are maybe not sure which solution they'd like to use. Like, we'd encourage them to reach out, hit us with probably the pointiest questions that they've got about, can your system do this? And if we can't demonstrate that, then, you know, they know, well, that's not the system for us. But if we can, okay, well, maybe that's something we could
This is
work
an
with.
option, yeah.
So for us, it's just really to continue to grow our user base. I won't give you all of our secrets of what we're sort of looking at past that, but yeah, for me and for the team, it's really just to like continue on all the awesome work that the guys have put into date. You know, there's been a lot of water's gone under the bridge, like many mistakes along the way that just make you a bit more resilient and ready to handle like the more complex sort of scenarios in the industry. So yeah, for us, it's just a lot of more of the same. We got to where we are. Well, what do we need to do to go to that next level? So yeah, we'd like to see our user base grow and connect those networks and really just be that gold standard TMS in Australia. We're not really focusing offshore. It's like, let's worry about Australia. Yeah. That's where we are. You see a lot of products try to go overseas because that's the scale and that's the investors talking. For us, it's like, well, let's just look after our own backyard and be that TMS that, you know, Australian companies can rely on.
Yeah, no, it's inspirational, mate. Getting to know, you know, what you guys have been doing over the last sort of 10 years, and with obviously your leadership and the rest of the team, it's like, it's inspiring just what you've been able to achieve. And like I said at the start, with having, you know, 10 years of going from nothing to where you are now, with, like you said, ASX listed companies, 36, 37 clients, and 4 kids, you know, like either Gemma's Wonder Woman or you've done it right for yourself as well. But really, really amazing, mate. Appreciate your time and talking through all the stuff, Gilby.
Cheers, Greenie. I think we should also touch on before we finish up, mate, that some of the support that you've been given in the business, mate. Appreciate your support, mate.
No, my pleasure, mate. It's always good to work with like-minded people. So it's it's been a lot of fun. So thank you, mate.
No worries.